I'll be talking to the Prime Minister later this morning, and I'll ask him a couple of questions about Malcolm Turnbull. But I've got to tell you, it's safe to say the public are fed up with Malcolm Turnbull, and he no longer speaks for the Australian people. Even now, though, from the sidelines, you can see he is disrupting the government almost at every turn. The junket to Bali. I posted an editorial on my Facebook page on Tuesday. There were almost 12,000 responses, 12,000, and they're astonishing. I won't bother you with a heap of them. David says, and Turnbull was the bloke who accused Tony Abbott of interfering. Ross wrote, this is how a Turnbull narcissist operates. He cannot accept that he's failed Australia in a big way and was removed. Rita says, Morrison shouldn't have sent Turnbull to Bali. No wonder the polls went down. Rudy, Morrison's continual grovelling to that bloke will be his undoing. Many Australians were expecting definitive action and a divorce from the Turnbull policies. After Turnbull's refusal to help in the Wentworth by-election, he should have been booted out of the Liberal Party, not shouted at taxpayer junket. Look, I don't think Scott Morrison, I'm not saying too much here, is grovelling to Malcolm Turnbull, I can assure you. But I will ask him one or two questions. And Helen said, for someone who said they were no longer in politics, he sure has a lot to say about Australian politics. I could give you 200 more, but we won't waste our time.
And imposed upon us, it's almost like they have to listen to international agencies like the United Nations. And Morris Newman the other day had a brilliant article in the Australian.
I wrote and congratulated him. It was outstanding.
Outstanding. It's one of those ones that you tuck away and keep as a reference.
Yep.
And almost on cue, as if to prove Stephanie correct, on comes Mr. Morrison after years and months of giving us this rhetoric about how they're going to save us from the next people smuggler invasion and all the rest of it, and then they tried to sneak in. They responded. He weakened under pressure from left-wing organisations. And it makes me wonder whether anything's changed. You know, do we have a clone of Mr. Turnbull? If only he stood out, or a leader stood out and gave us someone who would drain the swamp, not add water in it.
Oh, good morning, Alan. Yep. I wanted to speak about our defence. Richo had a Mr. Johnson on last week that explained in full the cost and of all the submarines it's going to we're going, and it's very frightening. And I think Christopher Pyne is absolutely toxic, and I think that they should put Jim Molan in his defence, and we should look at our bases where Russia's now getting very strong. China, that I don't know whether it's true or false, may be able to build a port, a naval base on Darwin, and I think we should eliminate all public ownership of any of our ports and our airfields where they're training all their pilots.
Well, I don't know whether you listen to me, Denise, but I've been making these points over and over again. The fact that you could lease Darwin Port, the business about the submarines is a joke. That was yet another Turnbull captain's call to try and save a few seats in Adelaide and save his own prime ministership. And now look, to the serious stuff, I'm not going to dwell on the polls, but can I just ask you what you are going to do, because people are very concerned about this, to bring the Liberal Party members, let's face it, it's not so long ago that the Liberal Party won a landslide in election, a massive vote, to bring them all back into the tent, because you're not just captain of the team, you're the coach of the team. Isn't it important that you fight on a narrow rather than a broad front? There is a story there to sell of low unemployment, significant tax return. You've talked about work ahead of welfare, border security, and the magazine The Economist said this week, Australia boasts the world's most successful economy. Is everyone singing off that sheet of music and prosecuting that case?
Yeah, in my team in the Parliament, they are. And it's important that we do just that, but also for members right across the country. I've been tremendously encouraged over the last 9 weeks with members coming back to the party. We're seeing that particularly up in Queensland. We're seeing it right around the country. And I appreciate that, because what I've been saying to the party from that very first moment when I said we've got to go back to those beliefs, those values upon which our party was based. And one of the key differences between us and Bill Shorten and the Labor Party is we don't think you have to bring people down to raise others up. We think if you give people a go, they'll take that, They'll get on with their lives. They'll run successful businesses. They'll employ young people. They'll work in their community. They'll raise their families. They'll make the choices that make our country stronger. That's why the Liberal Party was formed. And as I refresh and get us back to those values, I'm finding the party membership responding very strongly.
Prime Minister, can I remind you, though it most probably is a bit of a nightmare, that your predecessor in Indonesia said the conclusion that I took and my government took after very careful and considered advice, is that a policy that is well over 40 years old, 50 years old, should remain exactly the same as it is. This is in relation to where the embassy in Israel should be, Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. He said, the President expressed to me, as he has done to Mr Morrison, the very serious concern held in Indonesia about the prospect of the Australian Embassy in Israel being moved. There's no question, were that move to occur, it'd be met with a very negative reaction in Indonesia. Then we've got the lecture on Indonesia. We've got to be clear-eyed. We have to take into account Australia's national interest. As a person that is allegedly an emissary or was of the government, have you pulled Mr Turnbull in and indicated that you don't support his repetition of the pronoun I, and he was there to represent the views of government, and the views he represented were in contradistinction to your own views as Prime Minister of Australia?
Well, I got the report back from his visit. He was there to actually attend an oceans conference. The issues of trade and other things were not really part of the brief. But that said, look, Alan, my view and our government's view about these issues are clear. They're our view. That's what we're pursuing. And I'm always going to act with respect towards previous Prime Ministers, regardless of who they are. But I do think the exemplar of previous Prime Ministers about how they go about things post on our side of politics is obviously John Howard, and on the Labor Party side it's Julia Gillard. Now, I don't think there's a lot of profit, Alan, in me continuing to go over these issues. All I know is...
Will there be more missions for this man to be able to go to and sprout his own discredited views?
No.
Right. Are you aware of the like that he entered on the Twitter account Goes to Votes, because a tweet was put up which was laughing at the fact that in the latest opinion poll you had fallen, your ratings had fallen, and your predecessor liked that?
Yeah, I'm aware of it, but I just brush it off, Alan.
Good on. In the couple of minutes that's left, can I just ask you something, because you mentioned about the ALP policy. Now, this social platform, or the general Labor Party platform, is out. They're going to have, in that they mention transgender 36 times, bisexual 33 times. There are all sorts of references to all of those issues. However, amongst the 64 mentions of sexual orientation, 59 of intersex and so on, policies for all of this, they go on to have a new commissioner for sexual orientation, gender identity and intersex status issues. Does this stuff worry you?
Well, it does, and at a number of levels, but the main one is, why are they talking about small business and family businesses? Why aren't they talking about getting taxes down and electricity prices down? Why aren't they talking about those issues? I mean, they're obsessed with this stuff. I honestly don't understand. Remove
gender from birth certificates?
That was yesterday. I mean,
yeah.
And that's what they're going to debate at the Labor Party National Conference. Apparently, that is the issue, not what people are having to pay.
All right, well, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So Israel Folau decides today that he identifies as a woman. He feels like a woman. So under the Labor Party policy, he should be allowed to play women's sport, and he should not have to participate in any kind of test as to whether or not he's a woman.
It's ridiculous. It is just simply ridiculous.
Well, who's prosecuting that to tell the electorate it is ridiculous?
Well, me. I did yesterday, as did a number of my colleagues who are up saying exactly this. And it's and at two levels. A, it's ridiculous. But B, that is not... I mean, that just shows a betrayal of the objectives and the priorities of the Labor Party. That's all the stuff. I mean, you see a Labor Party... That's what they'll be talking about.
Okay.
We've
got to go. Now, what do I got? I'll give you a warning. I want to talk to you next time about it, ask you why we've the world's biggest coal exporter, but haven't built a coal-fired power station for 11 years. But that's for another day.
Sure.
Good morning, Alan. I've just read an article about Austria, and it says Austria follows Trump to withdraw from the Global Compact on Migration with Hungary.
Yep.
Now, I want to know when we're going to add an L to that and make it Australia withdraws. That's what Scott Morrison should be doing. If he wants to get the base back and say, no, we're not going to sign up.
Yeah.
Very simple.
That's it.
Very, very simple.
That's it. Good on you. I'm just making a note there. I forgot that. But, I've read that migration rubbish, signed by Julie Bishop, I might add. A global compact on migration. They're kidding us, aren't they?
Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.